Hey, what's up, VC? It's Steve again, Harmless Rebel. Time for another hard rock and heavy metal update. This is going to be kind of a mix of stuff I've bought recently. I say recent, within the last 6 or 7 months. And then stuff that I just pulled out that I was in the mood for spinning. First up, though, a little bit of Coroner, Punishment for Decadence. You just can't go wrong with Coroner. They're one of my, definitely one of my all-time favorite thrash bands. I got into them, maybe 92. And I've just always, I've since I got back into vinyl, this was one band that I wanted everything from. I have original German pressings of all of their albums on CD. They finally got repressed. Originals are hard to find, and when you find them, they want a lot of money, and they're usually not in great condition. Highly recommend picking up any and all of their albums. If you're into thrash, if you're into progressive metal, especially their last 3 albums. Actually, this one, you know, you get a little bit of you start to hear a little bit of it. This one is more straight up thrash, though. Next up, Infernal Majesty. I mean, I actually listened to this 2 or 3 months ago. I need to give this another spin. I believe, if I remember correctly, this is their debut. This was the High Roller reissue. I've heard their first 2 albums. I love both of them. This is my favorite of the 2, though. But None Shall Defy. Always love the artwork on there, too. And then check those guys out. I think that's on colored vinyl, too. I don't remember. Seventh Angel, The Torment. So this is their debut, and man, this album is a killer. Their second album is one that I had always been familiar with. I heard that for the first time around the time that it came out, and their second album has been on my playlist for the gym for a number of years. I love that album. I had never heard this until these reissues last year. I believe this, 2018 on Retroactive. Really nice quality reissues. Again, highly recommend these. Just really good thrash. Next up, just an amazing album. As a matter of fact, as soon as I'm done with this video, I'm going to throw this one back on. This one will... Is this their new one, or is this a 2018? It says 2018. I'm pretty sure this came out this year, though. But this is If Icarus Could Fly from Haunt. And I've talked about Haunt a little bit. I didn't get into them. I bought their albums towards the end of last year. Their last album and their first EP. And it took me a couple spins to really get them. But once I got it. I love these guys. This is probably top 5 new wave of traditional metal bands out there, and I've been playing the heck out of all of their stuff since I got it. They've got a couple singles that are coming out before the end of the year, I believe, that I've already pre-ordered. They're splits, and then they've already got the pre-order up for their next album. So really looking forward to that. But man, you can't go wrong with anything that these guys have released. Highly recommend checking out Haunt. Next up, this one was actually a little disappointment to me. It's not a bad album. It's just not as good as the band's last few albums. This band has one of my favorite vocalists, one of my favorite metal vocalists, one of the great guitar players who doesn't get enough credit for how good he is. But this is The Nature of the Beast from Impellitteri. It's still a good album. Don't take that the wrong way. I still dig it. I was just expecting more. Their last few albums have just been phenomenal. Actually, their last album, I believe, was in my top 5 for the year. And this one didn't even make my list for last year when it came out. I like it. Like I said, it just wasn't as good as the previous releases. If you're a fan of Impellitteri, I still recommend grabbing it. It's a nice piece for the Impellitteri collection. This is not the first album. This is not the album that I would buy to check out the band for the first time, though. Next up, a little Josephus. This is one of the reissues from maybe 2 or 3 years ago on Hookah Records. I don't remember when this was released. This is just really good 70s hard rock. Let's see, released in 1970, so some really early 70s hard rock. And I want to say this came out about 2015, this reissue, and a lot of guys in the VC were talking it up. I don't know why I waited so long to grab it. I think it was just one of those things where there was so much going on, so much new music that I forgot about it. And then one of my local record stores had it in their discount bin for like $15. So I snapped it up. But still, if you're into that 70s hard and heavy, this is definitely a must-have album. And originals of that one, I think that's one of them where the originals go for like $400 or $500. Next up, one of my all-time favorite bands. It may be my all-time favorite thrash band. I go back or my all-time favorite metal band. I go back and forth. I absolutely love this album. Reviews of it when it came out were hit or miss. Some people loved it, some people hated it. I absolutely loved it. What's the song? Of Mice and Men blew me, and it wasn't even a hit off of this album. But the first time I heard that, I was hooked. And when I had this, or on the CD, I would just play that song over and over again. A huge album, though. Back in the day, I think was one of the bigger hits off of here. I can't remember. There was one other one that was all over the radios when this came out. But this is The System Has Failed from Megadeth. They just reissued this. Megadeth just reissued this within the last year. However, this is the MOV pressing. I've actually had this for a while and had just never shown it in a video. I gave it another spin the other day. I got in the Megadeth mood and spun 2 or 3 of their albums. Next up, this is another one. I've actually got an original pressing of this. And I've always loved this album. This is probably my favorite album from the band, but this is Legions of the Dead from Tyrant. This was a recent reissue, Shadow Kingdom 2018. This one's actually signed by a few members of the band and by their manager on the inside. I'm not going to pull it out because I've shown it on earlier videos, but their 1985 album, just a killer metal from the 80s. Next up, I'm pretty sure I've shown this one before, but I pulled this out, gave it another spin. This is Terraphobia. What's it? What is it? Evolution? Evolution. Evilution. But this is part of the Rocks Underground series, number 8. Terraphobia is one of the guys. What's his name? Jelinek. Yeah, Mick Jelinek. He was one of the members of Mortification. Man, I tell you what, all the guys from Mortification ended up going out and doing their own things, and they're just putting out some great stuff. And there's one more Terraphobia album that I hope that somebody puts on vinyl, because I actually like that one a little bit better than this one, but just really killer metal. If you're a fan of Mortification, you're going to dig Terraphobia. Let's see, I pulled this one out and spun it again. This is the Vinnie Vincent Invasion that I got signed by Vinnie and Robert Fleischman. You got Vinnie right there, Robert Fleischman, and actually Robert signed the back as well. But I got this signed at the Kiss Expo that Vinnie appeared at. He had scheduled a bunch of other stuff after that, and he failed to show up for almost all of it. He scheduled concerts that he canceled. So I'm really glad that I was able to get this stuff signed, because it doesn't look like there's going to be a whole lot more signed Vinnie Vincent stuff out there. Next up, this one will be on my top up for the year. This album blew me away. This is a band. It's a hometown band for me. I grew up with these guys. And I've told this story before. I saw them in 94 or 95 with Megadeth. And they were so bad. It was a huge, it wasn't really an amphitheater. It was just this huge lot. It was called Compton Terrace. It was my favorite place for concerts, because they could fit like 60,000 people there. But we were back in the grass. I was laying on my girlfriend's stomach, and I fell asleep during their set. It just wasn't good, which was sad, because it's a hometown band that we all loved, and they just sounded terrible. And what sucked is everybody else on that bill sounded great. It was Fear Factory. It was their first major tour. Korn. This is when Korn first came out. Nobody knew who they were yet. They had That song "Blind" was the only hit that they had at this point, followed by Flotsam and Jetsam, and then Megadeth. Everybody else killed, and Flotsam and Jetsam was just absolutely flat. And I just kind of lost interest in the band at that point. I didn't want to listen to their stuff. Other than their debut, I didn't really care about anything else that they had released. And sadly, because I've gone on to grab their other albums and I like them, this is kind of a return to that earlier... They've never really been a thrash band, but kind of that earlier sound. They kind of got into the Black Albums mode for a while there, and we're playing some real similar stuff to that. And this is just... really killer throwback Flotsam and Jetsam. It's an amazing album. It's one I highly recommend that everybody pick up. It's The End of Chaos. Next, I pulled this one out just to give it another spin. I still need to grab their last couple albums. Actually, I think they just had a new one coming out, or they have one coming out. But this is, what's the name of this one? Forced Entry from Ram from 2016. Another of the really high level new wave of traditional metal bands. Another band, like I said, you really can't go wrong with any of their albums. I'm really digging them. One of the great thrash bands that most people have no idea about, and it really is sad. These guys really should have been in the big four of Teutonic thrash. Over what's the beer guys? I got one of their albums right here. Over Tankard. These guys blow Tankard out of the water. They were their first album came out like a year too late. Otherwise, I think they would have been in there. But this is Repent from Accuser. This is one of the No Remorse Records reissues. Another band you really just can't go wrong with any of their albums. Just such a good thrash band. I haven't heard their newest album. I still need to grab that one. I've kind of been slacking. This next one was a really nice pickup. I'm still hit or miss on this band. I've talked about their self-titled album as one of my all-time favorite albums. It would be in the top 10, maybe top 15 heavy metal albums of all time for me. This album, though, the more I listen to it, the more I like it. I just don't know what it is about this album that kind of throws me off a little bit. But this is The Skull from Trouble. I ran across this for a really good price. This is an original Combat pressing that was in near mint condition. I think I paid like $35 for it. So really happy to have it in the collection. I just need to give it a few more spins. There's just something not connecting with that one the way I've connected with a few of their other albums. There's a couple, and I've talked about it before, that especially the one After Trouble, I'm not a fan of, and that one sounds totally different. This is that early Doom sound, and I don't know why. It's just not connecting because it's a sound that I love. Next up, a nice original pressing I ran across. This is the second release from Nuclear Assault. Man, a lot of thrash tonight. Not even thinking about it, you know. I guess I was just in a thrash mood for a while there without thinking about it. But Survive from Nuclear Assault. Again, just another amazing, extremely underrated thrash band. You can't go wrong with these guys, especially those first few albums. They're just so good. Is that Combat 2? No, Combat IRS. Oh yeah, this one's a promo copy too. I don't believe it was a white label promo though. Next up, this one's a little bit of VCLT from Brother Scott Waters. What can I say? This is a band I was so late to. I just got into these guys 3 or 4 years ago, and they're really becoming one of my favorite bands. I have not heard a bad release from them. Actually, I take that back. There's one album of theirs that I don't dislike, but I don't like. It's just kind of mediocre. I'm glad I have it. I'll probably not give it much love. It's one of those things that I'll pull out from time to time just to see if it clicks with me. I know it won't, though, and it's the second album with, I can't think of his name now, on vocals. Anyway, but this is Enter the Realm from Iced Earth. This is their demo from 1989. It was repress. This one's orange vinyl. There's been a couple colors that this has been released on. Single-sided. Really killer, though. Highly recommend checking this one out. Or just this band in general. They really are. The way... is it Schaefer? John Schaefer, I believe is his name. Yeah, John Schaefer. The way he blends thrash, power metal, and just straight up metal together, it really is unique to him. And his writing is not just his licks, but his lyrics have always been absolutely amazing. And they're just such a good band that unfortunately doesn't get nearly enough credit or love. And it actually led them to breaking up for a time there. John disbanded Iced Earth for a while because he was just sick of seeing basically mediocre bands blow up and his band getting no love. And it's true, you know. Next up, Detritus went ahead and pulled this one out. I showed this the CD before. If But For One. I actually prefer their first album to this. I actually hope that they press the first album to vinyl. But retroactive press both their albums to CD and then press this one to vinyl. This is still a great album. They kind of go back and forth. There's some straight up thrash in here. There's some straight up metal. There's some mid-tempo stuff that's kind of right in between. Still a good album. I just think their first album was a little stronger. And I would recommend picking this up while they're still, or if they're still around. Next up, Deliverance. Hear What I Say. I've talked about this album a bunch over the years. It's been reissued a couple times. I got the CD reissue. You can see the poster back there that's signed by Jimmy. But this is just it's a weird album in that they kind of bounce around and touch on a number of styles. This is not the early thrash Deliverance that you're used to. There's a lot of straight up metal here. There's some experimentation. There's one song where you can tell he was listening to a lot of System of a Down because it's got that kind of System of a Down groove and feel to it. And actually, I think that's the only weak song on this album. I've loved this since it came out. This was supposed to be their last album, and it was for a number of years. And then last year, they got back together and released the Subversive Kind, which is an amazing album. Still one that I would highly recommend. More in the straight up metal area, and this is Jimmy doing his clean vocals. His clean vocals have kind of a David Bowie sound to them, which I've always loved. I love his brash vocals as well. Just when he sings, though, he's got an amazing voice. And as a Bowie fan, you know, I kind of like that anyway. Speaking of the Megadeth reissues, this is one of them. This was really the return for Megadeth in a lot of people's eyes. A lot of people didn't like Cryptic Writings. I personally did, it was more of a straight up metal album. There was no real thrash there. And then with Risk, they almost went like a hard rock route. They were trying to go radio friendly, I guess. And there were some amazing songs on that album. I loved Breadline. It's still one of my favorite Megadeth albums. And they still play it live from time to time. They disappeared for a couple of years, kind of members left the band. And I think this may have been this one may be the one that was mostly done with, was it this one? Maybe it was the one I already showed, where it was mostly session musicians. But regardless, this is The World Needs a Hero. This is a really killer album. I held off on buying this for a long time because when Risk came out, I was super disappointed with it. World Needs a Hero came out. I had no interest. I finally got it like a year after it came out and was blown away. But The World Needs a Hero, Moto Psycho, 1,000 Times Goodbye. I mean, there's so many good songs on this. Return to the Hangar. And it sounds really good. These represses that I've grabbed so far have all sounded really amazing. And as a Megadeth fan, I recommend picking up everything from Megadeth. This one has been on my want list for a long, long time, and I was really shocked to run across a copy in a local store, and I think I paid like $10 for it, maybe less than that. But this is Stars, do it with the lights on. And what this was basically demos, a couple songs from before the band became Stars. I can't remember off the top of my head what the name of the band was before they became Stars, and then some live tracks. Actually, a couple of the tracks went on to be to feature on the later band Hellcat. So just adding to the Stars collection. It's another one of those super important bands that not a lot of people talk about. Nikki Sixx says that Motley Crue, their sound and their look came directly from Stars. Next up, man, this album is so good. I've shown this before. I think I got my first copy like 5 years ago and showed it in the video. I actually ran across... I've been looking for a copy of this for brother Billy Hurst and finally found a copy. And I pulled out my copy because I wanted the nicer of the two. And gave it a spin again. And God, I forgot how great this album was. But this is Rock and Roll Machine from Triumph. This was a Canada-only pressing. There have been 2 versions of Rock and Roll Machine released in the U.S. Both of those versions are comps. Neither of them are this album. The U.S. version contains like 4 songs from their debut album and 4 songs from this album. So if you run across this and you don't have the Canadian copy, highly, highly recommend this. This album is such good 70s hard rock. I can't state enough how good these first 2 Triumph albums are. And again, they were only released in Canada. Next up, MOV pressing. Picked up Lights Camera Revolution from Suicidal Tendencies. I wouldn't say I'm a huge Suicidal Tendencies fan, but they've got some songs that have just always hit the spot for me. You Can't Bring Me Down. Let's see. Lost Again. Give It Revolution. Send Me Your Money. Huge, huge songs for them. I was really happy to run across this at a local store. Actually, this one and their debut are probably my 2 favorite Suicidal albums. Next up, just pulled this out to give it another spin. This is Fighter from Mass. Of course, released by No Life Till Metal Records, Scott Waters label. Got a couple of the stickers here that were available with the pre-order. Basically, this is the first Mass album. They recorded this. There were some disputes between their management and the record label, and this was shelved. This didn't get released on CD until the mid-90s, if I remember correctly. And this is the first time it's been pressed to vinyl. The CD version comes with additional tracks as well. Killer early 80s hard rock. I want to say this was 81 or 82. 82 this was recorded. Really, really good. I've been playing the heck out of this since it came out earlier this year. And I highly recommend grabbing copies while they're still available. Let's see what we got next up. A little bit of Savatage. The Dungeons Are Calling. Another just killer album. This is one of the recent pickups. I guess I've had this for a few months now. I've been playing it a lot lately. Just a huge fan of Savatage. Let's see what's going on. I've shown this one before. This is one that I picked up last time I went to Florida. I found this at one of the local stores, and I showed it real briefly. Given it a few spins since then. This is the second album from Whiplash. I honestly thought that this and their debut were their only 2 albums. Apparently they got 3 or 4 other albums that I need to find now. Whiplash, just another one of the I don't want to say second tier thrash bands, the second wave thrash bands. When was this? 89, I believe, when this one came out. I'm not even seeing it. Yeah, it doesn't say on the back, but this one's on Road Racer. I believe Road Racer was the early 90s. Regardless, Whiplash, killer thrash. And then last but not least, what we're listening to in the background, Puppet of Destruction from Ultimatum. I've talked about this before. This one is my favorite Ultimatum album. Is this one signed? Yeah, this one's signed by Scott Waters. This is number 5 of 150. Actually, I just got in. Haven't even spun it yet. But just got in Symphonic Extremities. I still need to order the live one. I need to mail this one to Scott and make him sign it. Have him sign it. Ask him to sign it. But I love this album. I pulled this out again. Spun it like 3 or 4 times. And coincidentally, I don't remember if it was the same day or the next day that I was spinning that. I got a message from Scott. He knew that I had been looking for the 2 CD version. So this is the original copy of it that I got. This was the reissue from 2009. And I don't remember if Scott sent this to me or if I ordered it and asked him to sign it, but he signed it and he had Robert sign it back in 2017. This was the single CD version. I later found out that there was a 2 CD version. There were only 50 or 100 of them pressed, and the 2 CD version included Fatal Delay, which is the Ultimatum demo. I have an original copy of the cassette that I've never opened, and I wanted to hear it, so I'm glad that I've got it on CD now and can actually listen to it. But he let me know that he found a copy, told me what the guy was looking for. I paid it, no problem. And then Scott, and again Robert, he got Robert to sign it as well, which is very cool. Again, love this album. Highly recommend picking. I don't even know if that one's still available. I'm pretty sure these sold out. And you can't see it, but it's on a really cool green vinyl. Actually, let's see what color. I don't even know what color this is. Let's open this up. I want to say I ordered the colored vinyl version. Yep, there we go. I don't remember if it's toxic green or nuclear green, but there we go right there. Symphonic Extremities. So I'm looking forward to spinning that one. That's it, VC. Just wanted to throw together a quick metal video. All my metal fiends out there. We're sick of seeing my country music videos, and they want to see a little bit of metal. So there you go, guys. Take care, VC, and I'll see you soon. Bye.